Hello and welcome to another episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr, where we talk about the art and culture of running an indie record label. Thanks for carving out a few minutes of your day to listen in. And I wanted to talk about something today that I'm hugely passionate about. And this is something I pulled from our free guide, which if you haven't got already, you can go to otherrecordlabels.com and download it right now for free. Go ahead, I'll wait. Just joking. But make sure you grab that. This is something I wanted to kind of like elaborate on a little bit. And I want to talk about album artwork and some tips for making great album artwork or making your album artwork great, whatever. This is something I'm hugely passionate about. If you've heard the episodes, I love talking about it with our guests. And one of the guests that we had a couple months ago was Molly Smith, who works for Ghostly International, and they are incredible. Not only are they an incredible record label musically, but they're also they just make really great artwork, and they make really great products. They make a ton of different products, not just music or records, and not even just apparel, but there's some really cool partnerships they do, and I feel like they've got artwork figured out. So I asked her if she would contribute to the free guide, and she came up with a couple things, and I want to elaborate on some of those today. And I've also added something of my own from my own experiences. So let's dive right in. The first thing I think is really important with album artwork is to take it seriously. That's just something that I think a lot of people don't do. And I know the artists that I've worked with have just kind of thought of it as an afterthought. And obviously the music is very important, if not most important, but I like to think about album artwork as a standalone piece of art that I put not as much, but I definitely put a ton of effort and thought and passion into creating the album artwork in tandem with the music itself. And I really think that they should work together. I love it when I can see album artwork and I feel like I know what the music is going to be like. Or when I hear the music and then I see the artwork, I feel like they complement each other. And sometimes that is really an iPhone photo of actual film photo in a basement that's blurry but it matches the music. You know what I mean? And I always find that to be really important, and I love when that synergy happens. But I think the most important thing is just to take it seriously. And one of the things that Molly said was, trust the pros, leave it to the pros. And this is maybe one of those times. And I know that a lot of you guys hire mastering engineers, and a lot of the music is recorded in a real studio. And this is one of those times where maybe a professional is important to hire to work on it. Because I mean, if you're printing vinyl, the templates are really important, and making sure you have bleed and all that, and the resolution is really important. So that's something. I think basically my point is to take it seriously. The second thing that Molly said, and again, a lot of this is in our free guide, but I thought it's important to kind of expand on it. Something else she said is to have an element of risk. I like that a lot. And if you look at some iconic album covers, they have something that's really striking in them, or there's something that has an image that's never been done before, or hasn't been done since. And you can think of tons of different photographs or pieces of art or paintings over the years that have been used as album covers, and how impactful they are and how they just sit in your mind. And when you hear music, you think of that image. I think that's really important. There's a record store locally that posts on Instagram all their new arrivals. And, when he's flipping through all the album artwork, I recognize a lot of them, even though some of these records I don't even think I've heard. I don't even think I know how they sound like, but the artwork is so iconic. And so think about that when you're making your own album art, is what's something that I can do that will stand the test of time and that will really impact people. I know so many times I'm in a record store and I see something and I have no idea what the music is like, but the artwork really strikes me, and I love that moment, and I have to hear the music. The third thing I want to say, and I've got four tips here, and the fourth is the most important, but a third thing, and again, this is something Molly said, is to save your work. Now think about this. You want to save this as like an InDesign or a Photoshop file, and you want it to be layered, and you want it to be high resolution. In fact, you want it to be as high as resolution as possible. The reason being, and I'll give you a little story. When I released my latest record, Worried Mind, I never intended that record to be on vinyl just because I couldn't afford it at the time. I was doing tapes, and tapes are like 3 inches by 4 inches or whatever. And for digital, it's like maybe 2,000 or 3,000 pixels by the same amount. Even a CD is like 5 by 5 inches. And so the artwork is generally started off pretty small. And I never intended to do vinyl, which is 12 by 12. Luckily, my artwork that I created was done in a way that was scalable. So I used vectors and I used embedded fonts and any graphics that you could take from 5 inches and scale up to 12 inches. You could even do it more if you were doing a billboard or something like that. I don't know if any of you have a budget for a billboard. I certainly do. Every record gets a billboard. But anyway, it's important when you're working on the artwork or your artist is working on the artwork to save that artwork and to make sure that it can be scaled up. Because what ended up happening with my record is a couple months after its release, somebody reached out to me and asked if they could release it on vinyl with me. And luckily I had the layered files, and scaling up and creating the backside of the record and the label wasn't an issue because I had the layered files and they were high resolution and we could scale it up. Bing, bam, boom. It was awesome. So that's really important to make sure that even though you're thinking, I'm not going to do vinyl now, what if you get signed? What if somebody wants to re-release your record? And as a label down the road, you get a budget or the album blows up and you want to do a special edition vinyl down the road or a poster. It's important to have that. The final thing is to create an album campaign. This is something that is I'm really passionate about, and I encourage all of our artists to do, and I work on with our artists to do this, and I do it on my own records. It's something I'm really passionate about. And an album campaign is basically creating the album artwork first, and then hopefully that artwork can be branched off. I mean, think of it like the album artwork at the top of a pyramid, and then the singles artwork. And sometimes an album will have like 2 or 3 singles or more that comes out of that album. And I like the single artwork to look like the parent, let's call it the parent artwork, like little offspring from that parent artwork. I also like live shows or the cassette version, or later on my last record, I did an acoustic version of that record. And so the artwork for the acoustic version album was kind of a spin-off of the actual album artwork. And so there were so many times where I used the artwork from that master, from the actual LP to go on vinyl and social media graphics and on a video, a cassette release, a banner for Facebook, all those different things. I think it's really important. And I mean, you think about it, I don't know if you're familiar with the term like brand guidelines or a style guide. Well, what that is that a company will use the same colors and the same fonts and the same imagery all throughout all of their letterhead and their TV commercials and their products. And what that does is it creates a familiarity with the customer. And so you think about this and think of how many album campaigns you can think of where the artwork was by the same artist and it was carried over multiple different formats. And I think that familiarity is really important, that you could see a posting on Reddit or on Twitter and be like, oh, I know what album they're talking about, even if it's just a little web graphic. So album campaigns are something I'm really passionate about. I don't want to dive into it too much now. And eventually I want to put together a little spreadsheet or a little PDF that shows like all the different spin-offs that one parent album can have in an album campaign, because it's something I'm really passionate about and I think about a lot. And we talked about it in the episode with Molly. And listen, if you haven't listened to that Ghostly episode with Ghostly International, first of all, check out that label. They are such a beautiful label. But listen to that episode, and some of these tips are in that free guide, which you can get at otherrecordlabels.com. I think you got to take artwork really importantly. I know a lot of you don't think about it and you're passionate about other areas, but I love it. I think it's important, and I think it can really help a release. Thanks for listening. Hey, a couple of days after I recorded this episode, I decided to expand on something I talk about in this episode, and I've done that in a video form. You can get that at otherrecordlabels.com/artwork. I think I wanted to expand a little bit more, and I did it after I recorded the episode. So go to otherrecordlabels.com/artwork after you listen to this to check it out.